Hey guys, this is Topic 3, Lesson 1, Multiplication Properties. Today we are going to identify and apply the commutative, associative, identity, and zero properties of multiplication. And something that for you to understand about these is that the properties of multiplication can be used to simplify computation and to verify mental math and paper and pencil algorithms. So some vocabulary you'll see today and that I will use a lot in this lesson are commutative property of multiplication, associative property of multiplication, identity property, and zero property. Some other words you'll hear me say are factors, okay, which are the numbers in a multiplication problem, and then the product, which is the answer to a multiplication problem. Okay, so make sure that you have your book, you have your notebook to take any notes, solve problems, and of course a pencil. Let's take a look at the multiplication properties at the top of your book on page 58. If you're not there, pause and make sure you get there. Okay, so it says, what are the properties of multiplication? And let's read this question here. Do 2 groups of 5 beach balls equal 5 groups of 2 beach balls? So over here they have a picture to represent that. Okay, they're showing here 2 groups of beach balls because the top row is blue, the bottom row is orange. Okay, and then on the bottom they show 5 groups of 2 beach balls because they each have a matching color, so you can tell that's the 5 groups. Okay, so it's asking if they are equal to one another, and as you can see, it's the same amount of balls in each picture. Okay, and the point of the commutative property is that the order of factors can be changed, but the product stays the same, just like in the associative property of addition. So 2 times 5 is 10, and 5 times 2 is 10. Okay, so let's look at, the commutative property of addition. Let's look at the next 3, which are on the top of page 59. Okay, the associative property of multiplication, you can change the grouping, change the grouping of the factors. The product stays the same. So down here they have 2 times 5. Do that first because they're in parentheses. Then multiply by 3, and then on the other side you can see that it is 5 times 3 goes first, and then multiply by 2. So when we multiply that, we get 10 times 3, which equals the same as 15. You got to do those first, times 2, and they both equal 30. Okay, so that is the associative property of multiplication. You can change the grouping of the factors and the product stays the same. Okay, look at the identity property of multiplication. This one's pretty simple, but when you multiply any number by 1, the product is that number. So I could do 105 times 1 and I would still get 105. Anything times 1 is itself. Okay, zero property of multiplication. When you multiply any number by 0, the product is 0. So I could do 1,500,000 times 0 and I would get 0. All right, so now that we have those properties covered, we're going to think about those as we solve in the guided practice section. So get your pencil ready for number 1. All right, so you should write down number 1 in your notebook, okay? All right, so it says in 1 through 5, write the multiplication property used in each equation. So this is where you need to refer to the top of your book to remember what to write. Okay, so number 1, okay, 65 times 1 equals 65. You look up, you can see that anything times 1 is the identity property, and you'll get itself. So you would write in there identity property. So go ahead and write that. My pen's a little bit slow. Pause, or I'll pause, and you can write that. Okay, and then looking at number 2, we have 45 times 6 equals 6 times 45. So if you look back at your chart, okay, I'm seeing that the order of factors can be changed, but the product stays the same. And that looks like it would be the commutative property. So I want you to go ahead and write that. Pause if you need to go ahead and write that. Spell it correctly because it's written up there for you. Okay, so go ahead and do 3, 4, and 5. And so pause and do that and then see if you got them right. You should have gotten for number 3 the 0 property, and 4 the commutative property, and then 5 the associative property because we changed the grouping of the factors, but would still get the same product. Okay, so let's look at number 6 and 7. Number 6 says using equations, give an example for each property of multiplication. So if I were to do the first one for you, or with you, you can write this down. Let's do the associative property. So I'm just going to use some random numbers. I'm going to say 3, let me get my pen here, 3 times, we'll say 15 times 20 equals, and I'm going to use the same exact numbers, 3 times 15 times 20, and I could have put them in a different order, but I'm just going to show that I can group 3 and 15, and I can group 15 and 20. Okay, maybe next time I'd do 3 and 20, so I'd rearrange the numbers. Okay, so go ahead and write an example of each kind. You have to put it on extra paper, or I guess you already have paper, so you don't need extra paper. Go ahead and do that. Okay, number 7, it says in the following equations, what number should replace each blank box? Which property of multiplication is used? So you need to not only fill in the box, but also write the name of the property. So do that for letters A and B. Okay, and then for independent practice, I will let you know what numbers I need you to do and practice with the different properties. Good luck, guys, and do your best.